Dawn broke over Rattlesnake Ranch, Texas. 10 cartel vehicles approached what they thought was just another aging ranch house. They didn't know James Miller had spent 30 years training America's deadliest snipers. His ranch hands were all retired Special Forces marksmen who'd chosen this remote location for a reason. As armed men moved into position, 15 scope lenses tracked their every move. The cartel brought 50 men to take one old rancher's land. Now they'd learn why. You never corner a man who taught Green Berets how to hunt. But before we jump back into the video, let us know where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something really special for you. And now, back to the video. The morning mist clung to the Texas grassland as James Miller completed his dawn perimeter check. A routine 30 years of Special Forces training had ingrained deeper than breathing. His weathered hands gripped the fence post, eyes scanning the horizon with the measured precision that had once made him the military's most legendary sniper instructor. At 62, Miller's frame remained iron-hard, his movements economical and purpose-driven. The ranch house behind him looked deceptively ordinary. Weathered wood, tin roof, wraparound porch, perfect for evening beers and watching the sunset. But like everything else about Rattlesnake Ranch, appearances were carefully engineered. Deception. The ranch hands were already at their morning posts. Mike Chen, former Delta Force, tended the north fence line while scanning approaches with practiced casualness. Tom Roberts, 20-year Green Beret veteran, moved horses in the south pasture, his position providing perfect overwatch of the access road. Sarah Martinez, who'd served 3 tours as a Marine Scout sniper before joining Miller's training cadre, checked irrigation lines that happened to cover every potential infiltration route. Inside what appeared to be an ordinary barn, Cooper Williams monitored sophisticated surveillance equipment disguised as farm machinery. The early warning system had picked up multiple vehicles approaching from the south, the cartel's favorite route for crossing into their territory. "Boss!" Cooper's voice crackled through Miller's concealed earpiece. 10 vehicles, multiple heat signatures, moving in convoy formation. Estimated 50-plus armed individuals based on thermal imaging. Miller allowed himself a thin smile. For 3 months, they'd been waiting for this response to his refusal to sell the ranch. 20,000 acres of strategic territory the cartel wanted for their smuggling operations. Their first negotiator had been polite. The second had made threats. Now they were coming to take what they thought was just another aging rancher's land. "Confirmed visual," Sarah's calm voice reported. 2 lead trucks carrying heavy weapons, rear vehicles loaded with assault teams. Miller reached up and adjusted his battered cowboy hat, the signal for all teams to initiate practiced response protocols. Across the ranch, 15 retired Special SO operators moved with fluid precision, their years of training transforming casual ranch activities into perfectly choreographed tactical positioning. Remember, Miller's voice carried the same steady authority that had guided America's deadliest snipers through their final qualifications. "We're defending home ground. Every firing position has been ranged. Every approach has been prepared. Let them come to us." The cartel convoy approached with arrogant confidence, dust billowing behind their customized trucks as they breached the outer perimeter. They had no way of knowing that every fence post was precisely measured and marked, every cattle guard calibrated for exact distance calculations, every seemingly random boulder or hay bale positioned for optimal fields of fire. Miller waited on his porch, the perfect image of an aging rancher. His rifle, a custom Macmillan TAC 338, capable of devastating accuracy at 1,500 yards, rested casually across his lap, like a trusty varmint gun. Around him, 15 of the world's most lethal marksmen maintained complete stillness, their positions invisible, their scopes tracking every movement of the approaching threat. The lead vehicle stopped at the final cattle guard. A man in an expensive suit emerged, flanked by heavily armed guards. His face carried the arrogant smile of someone accustomed to taking what he wanted through overwhelming force. "Senor Miller," he called out with false joviality, "we've come to conclude our business negotiations." Miller's response, when it came, carried the calm certainty of a man who had spent his life teaching others the art of precision violence. "Son, I'm afraid you've made a serious miscalculation." The cartel negotiator, Miguel Salazar, according to their intelligence, maintained his practiced smile, but Miller's trained eye caught the subtle tension in his stance. Behind the expensive suit and cultured manner lay a man who had orchestrated enough violent takeovers to recognize when something felt wrong. The morning mist was lifting, revealing the full expanse of Rattlesnake Ranch in the harsh Texas sunlight. "Senor Miller," Salazar spread his hands in an expansive gesture. "You misunderstand. We're here to offer you a very generous final payment for your property. My employers recognize the inconvenience of relocation at your age." Miller remained seated, his weathered hands resting casually on the rifle across his lap. Through his concealed earpiece, he could hear his team's positioning updates. Three-man team moving along the east fence, Sarah reported with clinical precision. Armed with modified AK-47s, amateur spacing and movement patterns. Technical. Vehicle in the rear convoy, added Mike Chen. Mounted 50 cal. Gunner exposed, target acquired. Multiple hostiles establishing perimeter. Tom's voice carried the calm assessment of decades in special forces. Standard cartel tactics. No awareness of prepared positions or fields of fire. Miller had spent 30 years teaching America's elite warriors the art of precision combat. Each of his ranch hands represented the pinnacle of special operations expertise. Now, watching cartel gunmen move with casual arrogance into carefully prepared kill zones, he felt an almost pedagogical urge to point out their tactical mistakes. "Mr. Salazar," Miller's voice carried easily across the yard, "I recognize you're trying to maintain professional courtesy, so I'll extend the same. You have exactly one opportunity to leave my property with your men intact." Salazar's smile tightened, fractionally. Behind him, more gunmen emerged from the vehicles. Tactical vests over designer clothes, expensive weapons held with more show than expertise. They moved to intimidation positions with the confidence of men accustomed to overwhelming frightened ranchers and farmers. "I admire your courage, old man." Salazar's tone shifted to practiced menace. "But surely you understand your situation. My employers have invested too much in this territory to accept rejection. We've brought 50 men to ensure you understand our commitment." "Thermal's picking up 3 more teams moving through the south pasture," Cooper reported through the command net. "Trying to establish flanking positions." "Range cards confirmed," Sarah's voice carried professional satisfaction. "All approaches covered. Permission to initiate countdown protocol?" Miller's hand moved to adjust his hat brim, the predetermined signal. Across the ranch, 15 scopes tracked priority targets with cold precision. Each firing position had been carefully prepared and zeroed, each field of fire precisely calculated. Each defender an expert in the art of precision violence. Target vehicles ranged and marked, Mike confirmed. Engine blocks and fuel tanks designated. Support weapons identified and bracketed, added Tom. 4 RPKs, 2 PKMs, plus the technical. Gunners acquired. "You seem very confident, Mr. Salazar," Miller responded conversationally. "For a man who's walked his entire force into a prepared kill box." The first hint of genuine uncertainty flickered across Salazar's face. Something about Miller's calm demeanor, about the ranch's seemingly casual preparation, triggered warning signals honed by years of cartel warfare. His eyes scanned the surrounding buildings and pastures with new awareness, finally recognizing the subtle signs of professional military positioning. "Sir," one of his security detail approached, voice low but urgent. "Something's wrong. We've lost contact with the flanking teams." The precision-engineered trap was becoming apparent. Every apparent cover position exposed users to multiple firing angles. Every obvious approach channeled movement into preset fields of fire. Even the ground itself had been subtly modified to force predictable movement patterns. "Last chance, Mr. Salazar." Miller's voice remained relaxed, almost sympathetic. "You've brought 50 men to threaten one old rancher. Would you like to know what I brought?" Salazar's hand moved toward his concealed pistol. Behind him, cartel gunmen began to recognize their vulnerability, eyes darting between 2 open spaces and 2 exposed positions. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the ranch yard, offering no concealment from the hidden observers tracking their every move. "You don't understand what you're doing." Salazar's attempt at intimidation carried a new edge of desperation. "The cartel doesn't forgive defiance. Even if you resist today, they'll send hundreds next time." "Son," Miller allowed himself a small smile, "I spent 30 years training the deadliest snipers in American military history. My ranch hands are all retired special operations personnel who chose this location specifically to discourage your kind of business negotiation." The revelation hit Salazar like a physical blow. His eyes swept the surrounding buildings, pastures, and elevated positions with new understanding. What had seemed like ordinary ranch structures and features suddenly revealed their tactical nature. Perfect shooting hides, interlocking fields of fire, carefully prepared defensive positions manned by invisible observers. Teams in position, Sarah confirmed through the command net. All priority targets acquired. Awaiting execution order. Vehicles targeted, Mike added. Escape routes covered. Support weapons bracketed. Tom's voice carried professional satisfaction. Technical gunner showing signs of awareness. Permission to initiate. Miller watched Salazar process the situation with growing comprehension. The cartel officer had orchestrated enough violence to recognize when the tactical advantage had shifted irrevocably. His men, still moving with unearned confidence, hadn't yet recognized the killing ground they'd walked into. Mr. Salazar, Miller's tone carried almost grandfatherly patience. I'm going to stand up now. When I do, 15 of the finest marksmen ever produced by American Special Operations will have your entire force in their crosshairs. What happens next is entirely your decision. Sweat beaded on Salazar's forehead despite the early morning cool. His security detail was finally recognizing the exposed nature of their positions, the subtle wrongness of the ranch's seemingly casual layout. Years of cartel violence had taught them to recognize the difference between amateur resistance and professional preparation. You should know, Miller continued conversationally, that every vehicle has been ranged, every support weapon crew acquired, every possible escape route covered. I spent my career teaching men how to hunt other men. Would you like to guess what kind of defensive setup a man with my experience would prepare? The morning silence stretched, broken only by the soft Texas wind and the nervous shuffling of cartel gunmen finally understanding their vulnerability. Salazar's practiced confidence crumbled further as he recognized the full extent of his tactical error. Miller's hands remained relaxed on his rifle, but his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. The next move is yours, Mr. Salazar, but I strongly recommend you consider the quality of men you've brought against the quality of men I've positioned to greet them. The breaking point came not from Miller or Salazar, but from a young cartel gunman whose nerves finally shattered under the invisible pressure of 15 precision rifles. His AK-47 snapped up toward the porch, triggering a cascade of events that Miller's team had rehearsed dozens of times. Before the cartel shooter's finger could reach his trigger, Sarah Martinez's .300 Winchester Magnum round removed him from the equation with surgical precision. The shot's report echoed across the ranch yard, but the shooter was already falling as Miller launched into motion. Execute! Miller's command carried the same calm authority he'd used on training ranges for 30 years. Priority targets first. Control the chaos. His TAC-338 rose with fluid grace as he rolled from the rocking chair to a prepared position behind the porch's reinforced railing. The ranch erupted in a symphony of precision violence. Mike Chen's first shot disabled the Technical's .50 caliber with a round through the receiver, eliminating the cartel's heaviest weapon. His second round found the gunner before the man could clear the mounted gun's blast shield. Tom Roberts systematically engaged the RPK crews, who were struggling to set up their weapons. 3 shots in under 2 seconds removed the cartel's support weapon capabilities with devastating efficiency. Sarah, from her elevated position in the converted grain silo, began methodically eliminating cartel shooters attempting to establish firing positions. Each round found its target with competition-level accuracy, her trigger press as smooth as when she'd won the Marine Corps sniper competition 3 years running. Multiple targets retreating to vehicles, Cooper reported from his surveillance position. East and west teams converging on the main group. Miller's rifle barked once, eliminating a cartel shooter attempting to organize a defensive position behind their lead vehicle. His second round punctured the engine block, disabling their primary escape route. Decades of training snipers had taught him the precise points to target for maximum effect. South team cut off, Sarah reported between precision shots. 6 targets neutralized, remainder pinned behind the cattle shelter. Through his scope, Miller watched Salazar scrambling for cover behind an SUV's reinforced door. The cartel officer's expensive suit was covered in dust, his practiced confidence replaced by genuine terror as his men died with professional efficiency. Jesus Christ! One of Salazar's security detail gasped, watching another shooter fall to Sarah's precision fire. These aren't fucking ranch hands! Miller's team continued their methodical engagement, each shot purposeful and precise. There was no wasted ammunition, no spray and pray panic fire. Just the calculated application of violence by experts who had spent careers perfecting their craft. Technical crew attempting to reposition, Mike reported. 2 targets, moving east along the fence line. "Got 'em," Tom responded. 2 shots cracked across the ranch yard, ending the threat before they could reach alternate cover. Salazar's remaining men were discovering the lethal geometry Miller had engineered into the ranch's layout. Every obvious cover position was pre-ranged and targeted. Every attempted defensive position exposed them to multiple firing angles. The very ground had been subtly sculpted to channel movement into prepared kill zones. "Sir," Cooper's voice carried professional satisfaction. Thermals showing major confusion in their rear elements. Multiple targets abandoning vehicles and attempting to withdraw on foot. "Remind them why that's a poor decision," Miller instructed, while adjusting his scope's elevation for a longer shot. The precision rifles spoke again in deadly concert. Sarah's Winchester eliminated 2 runners with a single round, a shot that would have been celebrated on any sniper range. Mike systematically disabled the remaining vehicle's engines, removing escape options with mechanical precision. 10 targets neutralized, Tom reported clinically. 8 more combat ineffective. East Group has lost unit cohesion. Confirmed 12 eliminations, Sarah added, plus 3 incapacitated. West sector cleared to 200 meters. Miller watched through his scope as the reality of their situation finally broke the cartel forces' remaining discipline. These men were accustomed to overwhelming frightened civilians with superior numbers and firepower. Now they were being systematically taken apart by an invisible enemy that seemed to have every angle covered. "Please," Salazar's voice cracked with desperation. "We surrender! For God's sake, stop shooting!" Miller's team maintained their firing positions, scopes tracking surviving cartel members with unwavering precision. Decades of combat experience had taught them that desperate men often made irrational decisions. "Mr. Salazar," Miller projected his voice across the killing ground that had once been his front yard, "have your men drop their weapons and lie face down with their hands on their heads. Anyone who doesn't comply in the next 5 seconds will be considered a continued threat." The order was obeyed with frantic haste. Expensive weapons clattered against Texas limestone as surviving cartel members prostrated themselves in the blood-stained dirt. Professional killers who had swaggered onto the ranch less than 10 minutes earlier now lay trembling under the invisible scrutiny of Miller's team. "Cooper," Miller instructed while maintaining his sight picture on Salazar. "Call our friends at the DEA. Tell them we've got some guests who'd love to discuss cartel business." "Already on it, boss," Cooper replied. "They're rolling with FBI tactical support. ETA 17 minutes. Miller allowed himself a small smile. The DEA had been building a case against this cartel cell for months. His team had just handed them a collection of senior members and enough probable cause to dismantle their entire regional operation. "Target groups consolidating," Sarah reported, counting 17 survivors, all complying with surrender instructions. "No active weapons observed." "Confirmed," Tom added. "All visible targets subdued. No movement at range boundaries." Through his scope, Miller studied Salazar's defeated posture. The cartel officer lay spread-eagled in the dirt, his $1,000 suit stained with Texas earth and darker matter from nearby casualties. Around him, his surviving men remained frozen in similarly submissive positions, finally understanding the lethal efficiency of the trap they'd walked into. "You know what your biggest mistake was, Mr. Salazar?" Miller asked conversationally, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent ranch yard. "You assumed that an old man's ranch would be an easy target, that superior numbers and cartel reputation would overwhelm any resistance." Salazar didn't respond, but Miller continued his impromptu lesson. "I spent 30 years teaching America's best warriors how to hunt men like you. Every member of my team is a combat-proven special operations veteran. We chose this location, specifically because it was perfect for defensive preparation." In the distance, the distinctive sound of approaching helicopters began to grow. The DEA's tactical response would include air support, both for prisoner transport and to search for any cartel survivors attempting to escape through the surrounding terrain. "Team status?" Miller requested, maintaining his professional focus, despite the imminent arrival of federal authorities. "All defenders operational," Mike reported. "0 casualties or injuries. Ammunition expenditure within expected parameters," Sarah added. 47 rounds total, 43 confirmed. Impacts. The efficiency of their response reflected decades of combined combat experience. Each shot had been purposeful and precise, a testament to the quality of Miller's training and his team's professional expertise. "Cooper," Miller instructed. Prepare the surveillance footage for the DEA. They'll want documentation of who fired first and proof that our response was proportional to the threat. Already compiled, boss, Cooper replied. Multiple angles showing their shooter's attempted engagement. All our return fire logged and geotagged. Miller had ensured every aspect of the ranch's defense was legally justifiable. Surveillance systems documented all approaches, communications were recorded, and force was applied with precise discipline. His team hadn't survived multiple combat tours by being careless about operational details. The helicopters were visible now, black shapes approaching rapidly from the east. Behind them, the dust cloud of multiple ground vehicles marked the approach of federal tactical teams. Mr. Salazar, Miller addressed the prone cartel officer. I imagine you're about to have a very interesting conversation with the DEA. I'd strongly encourage complete honesty about your organization's activities in this region. Consider it a professional courtesy from one businessman to another. Salazar remained silent, but the subtle trembling of his shoulders suggested he fully understood the magnitude of his failure. He had come to seize an old rancher's property through overwhelming force. Instead, he delivered much of his regional leadership directly into federal custody. All teams maintain security, Miller instructed as the helicopters began their final approach. DEA Tactical will handle prisoner processing, but stay alert for last-minute desperation moves. His defenders acknowledged with professional precision, their rifles maintaining perfect target tracking despite the growing chaos of federal arrival. Years of combat operations had taught them that surrender situations often produced unexpected complications. The first helicopter touched down in the designated landing zone, another seemingly random clear area that had actually been prepared for exactly this purpose. DEA tactical teams emerged with practiced efficiency, their own weapons covering the prone cartel survivors as they began systematic prisoner processing. Miller watched through his scope as federal agents secured and identified each survivor. This operation's aftermath would dismantle a significant portion of the cartel's regional infrastructure, a bonus outcome to protecting his ranch from their expansion attempts. Stand by for law enforcement handoff, he instructed his team. Maintain coverage until all prisoners are secured and transported. Then we'll begin site documentation and cleanup. The Texas sun climbed higher as federal agents swarmed the ranch, processing prisoners and documenting the precision violence that had shut down a cartel incursion with mechanical efficiency. Miller's defenders maintained their discreet positions, invisible professionals whose deadly skills had just reminded the cartel why some targets weren't worth pursuing. On the porch, Miller's rocking chair still swayed gently in the morning breeze. Next to it, his coffee cup remained half full, steam still rising into the Texas air. Sometimes the most effective military operations looked exactly like peaceful retirement, right up until they didn't. The DEA command post established on Miller's front lawn hummed with controlled chaos as federal agents processed the morning's events. Special Agent Diana Ramirez, 20 years of cartel operations experience evident in her precise movements, studied the tactical overlays Cooper had provided from the ranch's surveillance systems. This is extraordinary, she admitted, watching high-resolution footage of the brief but devastating engagement. Your team engaged 53 cartel gunmen with 0 civilian casualties and perfect target discrimination. Every shot documented and justified. Miller sipped fresh coffee from his porch position, maintaining situational awareness even with federal tactical teams securing the area. Old habits, ingrained through decades of special operations, didn't fade just because official authorities had arrived. We've had 3 months to prepare since their first negotiator arrived, he explained, gesturing toward the ranch's seemingly casual layout. Every feature serves multiple purposes. That cattle shelter they tried to use for cover. Reinforced. Sidewalls calibrated for bullet penetration at exactly the right angle. The decorative boulder arrangement by the front gate. Precise range markers disguised as landscaping. Ramirez shook her head in professional admiration. Through her earpiece, updates continued streaming as her teams processed survivors and documented the scene. 17 prisoners secured for transport. 28 confirmed KIA. All shots documented. 8 more wounded, receiving medical treatment. Vehicle inventory shows significant weapons cache. Your surveillance coverage is incredible, she noted, watching multiple camera angles of the brief firefight. We've been building a case against the Salazar operation for months. This gives us everything we need for a major prosecution. Cooper, Miller called to his technical expert. Show the agent our full coverage package. Cooper Williams approached with another tablet, his unassuming appearance belying his extensive special operations intelligence background. We've maintained comprehensive surveillance since their first contact. Every meeting, every threat, every attempted intimidation recorded and catalogued. The tablet displayed an intricate web of cartel movements throughout the region. Miller's team hadn't just defended their ranch, they'd been quietly gathering intelligence on the entire operation. Those weekly supply runs to the North Pasture, Cooper continued, actually signals intelligence collection. The regular fence maintenance, thermal imaging of their movement patterns. Even the cattle herd serves a purpose. Their grazing rotations let us map every approach route they might use. Ramirez studied the data with growing appreciation. Her task force had spent months trying to document the cartel's regional infrastructure. Miller's team had handed them a complete intelligence package wrapped in probable cause. "Sir," a DEA tactical operator jogged up, his expression urgent. "You need to see what we found in their vehicles." The group moved to where federal agents were documenting the cartel convoy's contents. The lead SUV's reinforced trunk contained a collection of tools that spoke of darker intentions than simple land seizure. "They weren't just coming to pressure you," Ramirez observed grimly, cataloguing the implements of torture and interrogation. This was going to be a statement operation, making an example of anyone who refused their expansion. Miller's expression remained neutral, but his team exchanged knowing glances. They had suspected the cartel's true intentions, which was why today's response had been calculated for maximum effect. "Agent Ramirez," Sarah's voice crackled through the command net. "We're getting movement on the thermal at the southeast property line. Multiple heat signatures approaching on foot." "Cartel reinforcements," Cooper confirmed, checking his surveillance feeds. "Looks like their backup team, probably waiting to support the main assault." Miller's defenders shifted with silent efficiency, rifles orienting toward the new threat. Even with federal authorities on scene, they maintained their tactical discipline and readiness. "Your property," Ramirez keyed her radio. "Your call, Mr. Miller." "Mike," Miller instructed calmly. "Demonstrate why they should reconsider that approach." A single shot rang out from Mike's position. Seconds later, Cooper's thermal imaging showed the approaching group scattering in panic as their lead element encountered precision fire. "Warning shot landed exactly 5 meters in front of their point man," Mike reported with professional satisfaction. "They're withdrawing back across the property line." "Agent Ramirez," Miller suggested, "you might want to have your helicopters check the southeast quadrant. I suspect you'll find more cartel vehicles staged for their second wave." Ramirez was already coordinating with her air assets, directing them to investigate the area Mike had indicated. Within minutes, the radio crackled with confirmation. "Command, Air 3, multiple vehicles located at the given coordinates. Suspects, fleeing on foot. Request permission to pursue." As federal agents moved to intercept the reinforcement group, Miller's team maintained their defensive positions. Years of combat experience had taught them that fluid situations often produced unexpected developments. "Boss," Cooper called from his surveillance station, "you should see what we found on Salazar's phone. Looks like this operation went higher up their chain than we thought." Miller joined him at the monitoring setup, where Cooper had already cracked the cartel officer's device security. The messages and documents revealed an operation sanctioned by the highest levels of the organization. "They've been watching us for weeks," Cooper explained, scrolling through surveillance photos. "But they completely misread what they were seeing. Thought we were just agricultural workers maintaining a ranch. Even our range practice looked like normal ranch hands plinking at coyotes." The cartel's intelligence failure was understandable. Miller's team had spent years perfecting their cover as simple agricultural workers. Every tactical movement disguised as ranch maintenance. Every shooting position concealed within normal farm structures. Even their weapons were carefully hidden, within legitimate ranch equipment. "Show me their operational planning," Miller requested, studying the documents Cooper had accessed. The cartel's assault scheme demonstrated their fatal underestimation of the ranch's defenses. They had prepared for armed resistance from a few ranch hands, bringing overwhelming numbers to ensure quick submission. Instead, they had encountered a perfectly prepared defensive position manned by elite combat veterans. They had secondary teams staged at 3 locations, Cooper indicated on the tactical map, planning to surround the property and prevent any escape. Didn't realize we'd already mapped their most likely support positions and pre-ranged every approach route. Miller nodded with professional appreciation. The cartel had planned a textbook intimidation operation exactly as he'd expected. Their predictability had allowed his team to prepare the perfect counter. "Agent Ramirez," he called, "your air units might want to check these other locations, likely more evidence staged for their follow-up phases." As federal forces expanded their search according to the intelligence from Salazar's phone, Miller's defenders maintained their tactical focus. Sarah's precision rifle still covered the main approach. Tom's position secured the vulnerable flanks. Mike kept watch over the reinforcement routes they'd identified. "Multiple vehicles located at secondary sites," Ramirez confirmed minutes later. "Tactical teams moving to secure. This is incredible. We're going to dismantle their entire regional infrastructure in one operation." Miller allowed himself a small smile. The cartel had intended to make an example of his ranch, demonstrating the futility of resistance to their expansion. Instead, they had walked into a perfectly engineered trap that would cripple their organization. "Cooper," he instructed, "prepare a complete intelligence package for Agent Ramirez. Everything we've gathered on their operations, movements, and personnel. Might as well make this as comprehensive as possible." The DEA's evidence collection teams worked with methodical efficiency, documenting the morning's engagement and securing the extensive intelligence Miller's team had gathered, each piece adding to the comprehensive case against the cartel's regional operation. "There's one thing I don't understand," Ramirez admitted during a break in the processing. "Why here? Why would experienced special operations veterans choose to retire on a ranch in cartel territory?" Miller studied the property that had become both home and defensive position. The land that appeared vulnerable had been carefully prepared as a deadly trap. The isolation that seemed to invite cartel aggression had actually been carefully chosen for tactical advantage. "We chose this location precisely because it would draw their attention," he explained. "Spent 2 years preparing the perfect defensive position, knowing they'd eventually try to seize it. Everything they saw as weakness was engineered to encourage exactly the kind of direct assault they attempted today." Ramirez's expression showed dawning comprehension. Miller's team hadn't just defended against a cartel incursion. They had baited and prepared for it, turning their ranch into an elaborate trap for an overconfident enemy. "Your entire operation," she realized, "the ranch, the cover as retired agricultural workers, even the seeming vulnerability, it was all designed to draw them into a prepared kill zone." "Sometimes the best defensive position is one that looks like a soft target," Miller confirmed. "We identified this property specifically because it was vital to their smuggling routes. Knew they'd eventually try to seize it, just had to prepare properly and wait for them to take the bait." The Texas sun climbed toward noon as federal agents continued processing the scene of cartel ambition meeting special operations expertise. Miller's defenders maintained their vigilance, professionals who understood that tactical situations remained fluid until fully resolved. In the command post, Cooper continued extracting intelligence from seized cartel devices, while Sarah's precision rifle covered the ongoing prisoner transport. Tom coordinated with DEA tactical teams securing the outlying staging areas, while Mike maintained overwatch on potential reinforcement routes. The morning's brief violence had demonstrated the deadly efficiency of Miller's prepared defense. But the true impact would be felt in the comprehensive dismantling of cartel infrastructure their intelligence would enable. Sometimes, the best special operations victory looked exactly like a simple ranch defending itself, right up until it revealed its deeper purpose. As evening approached Rattlesnake Ranch, Miller gathered his team in what appeared to be a normal barn, but served as their tactical operations center. The DEA's primary evidence collection was complete, though federal teams continued processing the outlying areas. Now was time for the after-action review that followed every operation, a habit ingrained through decades of special operations experience. "Cooper," Miller addressed his intelligence specialist, "walk us through what we learned from their devices." Cooper's fingers moved across multiple screens with practiced efficiency. The barn's interior revealed its true nature. State-of-the-art surveillance systems disguised as agricultural equipment, tactical communications gear hidden within farm tools, and enough technology to run a military command post concealed behind weathered wood walls. "The operation went higher than local cartel leadership," Cooper began, displaying intercepted communications. This was sanctioned by their regional command. Salazar's phone contained direct orders from the organization's upper echelon. The YNA screens showed an intricate network of cartel operations throughout the region. Text messages, photos, and operational plans revealed the full scope of their intended takeover. They've been watching us for months, Cooper continued, showing surveillance photos taken of the ranch. Regular observation teams disguised as hunting parties or lost tourists, thermal imaging of our structures, even drone reconnaissance masked as agricultural surveys. Sarah Martinez, her precision rifle still within arm's reach, studied the cartel's intelligence with professional interest. They completely misread our defensive preparations, thought the range markers were just random, landscaping, assumed our shooting practice was casual plinking. Classic failure of assumptions, Tom Roberts added from his position near the tactical display. They saw what they expected to see, aging ranch hands maintaining a vulnerable property, never questioned why retired agricultural workers moved with tactical precision or maintained perfect fields of fire. Mike Chen manipulated the surveillance feeds, showing outlying cartel positions. Secondary teams were staged here, here, and here, he indicated on the tactical map. Planning to cut off any escape routes, standard cartel intimidation tactics, exactly as we anticipated. Miller nodded with satisfaction. His team's diverse backgrounds and specialties had enabled them to predict and prepare for the cartel's eventual move against the ranch. Tell me about their command structure, he requested. Cooper brought up personnel files compiled through months of surveillance. Salazar was their regional enforcer, responsible for expanding territory through intimidation and violence. His capture gives us unprecedented insight into their organization. The screens displayed an intricate hierarchy of cartel leadership, each position annotated with intelligence gathered by Miller's team. This is Vicente Ramirez, Cooper indicated, a stern-faced man in an expensive suit. Controls their smuggling routes through 3 states. He authorized the operation against us personally. Eduardo Torres, another image appeared, manages their weapons procurement and tactical teams. He's the one who planned today's assault force composition. And Miguel Ortiz, a third face, joined the display, their regional intelligence chief, supposedly ex-Mexican military intelligence. He coordinated the surveillance of our ranch. Sarah studied the organizational chart with a sniper's analytical precision. Their entire regional leadership was invested in this operation. Taking the ranch would have given them a perfect staging area for expanding their smuggling routes. Instead, Tom added, with professional satisfaction, we've handed DEA enough intelligence to dismantle their infrastructure across 3 states. Sometimes the best trap is one the enemy walks into willingly. Miller's team had diverse backgrounds that made them uniquely suited for this operation. Sarah Martinez had served 3 tours as a Marine Scout sniper before joining Miller's sniper training cadre. Her precision rifle work had earned her multiple distinguished shooting awards and a reputation for exceptional accuracy under pressure. Tom Roberts brought 20 years of Special Forces experience, specializing in unconventional warfare and defensive operations. He had helped design the ranch's elaborate security measures, turning apparent vulnerabilities into tactical advantages. Mike Chen's Delta Force background included extensive work in counter-narcotics operations. His understanding of cartel tactics had been invaluable in predicting and preparing for their assault methods. Cooper Williams had served in Special Operations Intelligence, his technical expertise enabling them to gather unprecedented information about cartel activities. His surveillance systems transformed a working ranch into a sophisticated monitoring station. Show me their tactical planning, Miller requested, studying the documents Cooper had extracted from seized devices. The cartel's assault scheme demonstrated their fatal underestimation of the ranch's defenses. They had prepared for armed resistance from a few ranch hands, bringing overwhelming numbers to ensure quick submission. Instead, they had encountered a perfectly prepared defensive position, manned by elite combat veterans. They staged additional weapons here. Cooper indicated a location several miles away, planning to establish a permanent presence after seizing the property. Even had construction plans for expanding the structures into a major smuggling waypoint. The screens showed architectural drawings and supply manifests. The cartel hadn't just wanted the ranch for its location. They had intended to transform it into a significant operational hub. Agent Ramirez's teams are moving to secure their staging areas now, Mike reported, monitoring DEA communications, finding significant weapons caches and documentation. This is going to cripple their regional infrastructure. Sarah maintained overwatch from her elevated position, her precision rifle covering approaches even with federal authorities on scene. Years of combat experience had taught them all that tactical situations remained fluid until fully resolved. Talk me through the engagement statistics, Miller instructed. Cooper displayed the after-action data compiled from their surveillance systems. 53 cartel gunmen in the primary assault force. 28 confirmed eliminations. 8 wounded, 17 captured. All shots documented and legally justified. Total ammunition expenditure, 47 rounds. 43 confirmed impacts. No collateral damage or unintended casualties. Engagement duration, approximately 3 minutes from first shot to surrender. Every aspect captured on multiple cameras and thermal imaging. The tactical efficiency reflected their extensive preparation and professional expertise. This hadn't been a random ranch defending itself. It was a precision military operation executed by elite veterans. "Show me the property modifications," Miller requested. The screens displayed detailed schematics of how they had transformed an ordinary ranch into a sophisticated defensive position. The grain silo where Sarah maintained overwatch had been reinforced and modified with concealed firing ports, providing perfect coverage of all approaches. The cattle shelter's walls were specifically engineered to channel enemy movement while providing zero actual cover, a deadly trap for anyone seeking protection. Even the terrain itself had been subtly altered, creating natural funnels that forced attackers into pre-ranged killing zones. 2 years of preparation, Tom noted with professional satisfaction. Every feature serving multiple purposes. Agriculture and ranching providing perfect cover for defensive preparations. The barn's surveillance systems continued monitoring the property perimeter while Cooper extracted more intelligence from seized cartel devices. Sarah's precision rifle maintained security, even as federal agents processed evidence and transported prisoners. "Their backup teams are still out there," Mike reminded them, indicating thermal signatures at the property boundaries. "Watching, trying to understand what happened to their main force." Miller nodded, studying the tactical displays. The morning's engagement had been decisive, but experience had taught them that cartel operations rarely ended cleanly. "Maintain security protocols," he instructed. "DEA has the prisoners, but we still have a perimeter to defend. The cartel will want to understand how their operation failed so completely." His team acknowledged with professional precision, each returning to their assigned duties. The brief violence of the morning had demonstrated their tactical efficiency, but the true test would be securing their gains and exploiting the intelligence they'd gathered. "Cooper," Miller addressed his technical expert, "prepare a complete briefing package for Agent Ramirez. Everything we've gathered on their operations, personnel, and infrastructure. Let's make sure this hurts their entire regional organization." The screens displayed an intricate web of cartel movements, facilities, and personnel. Miller's team hadn't just defended their ranch, they had collected enough intelligence to dismantle a significant criminal enterprise. "There's something else," Cooper added, displaying a new set of intercepted communications. "Looks like their regional command is scrambling to understand what happened. Multiple messages asking how 50 experienced gunmen were taken down by a few ranch hands in under 3 minutes. Sarah allowed herself a small smile while maintaining her observation position. "Should we tell them they attacked one of the most sophisticated defensive positions this side of a military base?" "Let them wonder," Miller replied, studying the tactical displays. "Sometimes uncertainty is a better deterrent than knowledge. They'll be questioning every seemingly vulnerable target from now on." The Texas sun began setting over Rattlesnake Ranch, casting long shadows across ground that had seen precise violence just hours earlier. Federal agents continued processing evidence while Miller's team maintained their defensive readiness. Their cover as simple agricultural workers had been partially exposed, but the true sophistication of their operation remained concealed. Sometimes, the best special operations victories stayed hidden behind mundane appearances, a lesson the cartel had learned at significant cost. Night settled over Rattlesnake Ranch, but Miller's defensive operation maintained full readiness. The DEA's floodlights cast harsh shadows across the property, while federal agents continued processing evidence. In the command barn, Cooper's surveillance systems painted the surrounding territory in thermal imagery, monitoring for any cartel response to their morning defeat. "Multiple heat signatures detected," Cooper reported, manipulating the high-resolution displays. "Looks like observation. Teams at the property boundaries, trying to understand what happened to their assault force." Miller studied the tactical feeds with practiced analysis. After decades running special operations, he recognized the patterns of an organization struggling to comprehend catastrophic failure. "Show me their communications intercepts," he requested. Cooper's fingers danced across multiple keyboards, bringing up encrypted messages they'd pulled from seized devices. "Status of Salazar team unknown. No response to contact attempts. Satellite imagery shows major federal presence at target location. Require immediate assessment of operational failure. regional command demanding explanation for loss of assault force. "They're scrambling," Sarah observed from her elevated position, her precision rifle still covering approaches even in the darkness. Her night vision optics transformed the ranch's shadowed expanses into daylight clarity. Entire regional hierarchy, trying to understand how their elite tactical team got dismantled in under 3 minutes. The command barn's interior revealed more of its sophisticated nature as night operations commenced. Tactical displays showed multiple camera feeds, motion sensors painted digital tripwires across likely approach routes, and thermal imaging tracked every heat signature within their security perimeter. "Talk me through our security status," Miller addressed his team. Mike Chen manipulated the defensive displays, showing overlapping coverage zones. "Primary perimeter secured through multiple sensor systems. Sarah has overwatch on all approaches. Tom's teams are running staggered patrols with night vision equipment. Even with DEA on site, we're maintaining full tactical readiness." "Federal presence status?" Miller inquired. "Agent Ramirez has 3 tactical teams on site," Cooper reported, monitoring DEA communications. "Evidence collection continuing under floodlights. Prisoner transport complete except for Salazar. They're keeping him here for additional questioning." The K. Screens showed federal agents methodically documenting the morning's engagement. Every shell casing marked and photographed. Every impact point recorded. Every moment of the brief violence captured from multiple angles. "Show me what else we pulled from their devices," Miller requested. Cooper brought up an intricate web of cartel intelligence, operational plans, personnel files, smuggling routes. Months of surveillance had given them unprecedented insight into the organization's regional infrastructure. "This is their command structure," Cooper indicated an organizational chart. Salazar reported directly to Vicente Ramirez, their regional director. "Ramirez authorized this operation personally after our second refusal to sell." The displays showed an elaborate criminal enterprise, smuggling routes mapped in detail, safe houses identified and surveilled, financial transactions tracked and recorded. Miller's team hadn't just defeated a cartel assault, they had gathered enough intelligence to dismantle their entire regional operation. "Their backup teams are still trying to make sense of what happened," Sarah reported, watching thermal signatures through her scope. "I count at least 3 observation posts, staying well beyond engagement range after this morning's demonstration." Tom Roberts entered the command barn, his patrol route completed with practiced efficiency. 20 years in special forces had taught him never to trust apparent victory without verification. "Perimeter sweep complete," he reported. "All defensive. Positions remain concealed and operational. DEA teams are staying within our designated safe zones. No sign of cartel probing attacks." Miller nodded with approval. His team's diverse backgrounds made them uniquely suited for this operation. Sarah Martinez hadn't just been a Marine Scout sniper. She had revolutionized their urban sniper protocols during 3 combat tours. Her precision rifle work had earned her recognition as one of the most skilled marksmen in U.S. military history. Tom Roberts brought decades of special forces experience in unconventional warfare. He had helped design military defensive positions across 4 continents before applying that expertise to transform an aging ranch into a tactical masterpiece. Mike Chen's Delta Force background included extensive work with elite counter-narcotics units. His understanding of cartel tactics had enabled them to predict and prepare for every aspect of their assault strategy. Cooper Williams had served in classified special operations intelligence roles, his technical expertise transforming agricultural equipment into sophisticated surveillance systems. His monitoring station gathered intelligence that rivaled major military installations. "Show me what Salazar's phone revealed about their larger operation," Miller requested. Cooper brought up documents extracted from the cartel officer's encrypted device. "They've been expanding aggressively across 3 states, using intimidation and violence to seize strategic properties. Our ranch was meant to be a major victory, demonstrating the futility of resistance to their expansion." The screens displayed an ambitious criminal enterprise, property acquisitions mapped across the region, smuggling routes carefully planned and coordinated, intelligence gathering operations, monitoring law enforcement and potential opposition. "Agent Ramirez's teams are having a field day with this intelligence," Cooper added. "We just handed them everything needed to dismantle the cartel's entire regional infrastructure." "Speaking of Agent Ramirez," Miller noted, "what's the status of her conversation with Salazar?" Cooper switched feeds to show the DEA's temporary interrogation setup. Agent Ramirez sat across from the captured cartel officer, his expensive suit still stained with Texas dirt and darker matters. "He's talking," Cooper reported, monitoring the interview. The complete failure of his operation seems to have broken his loyalty to the organization, giving up details about their command structure, smuggling operations, financial networks. The screens showed Salazar gesturing animatedly as he described cartel facilities and personnel. His elegant facade had crumbled in the face of catastrophic defeat and federal custody. They never suspected what they were really attacking, Sarah observed with professional satisfaction. Thought they were intimidating simple ranch hands. Instead, they hit a defensive position engineered by elite special operations veterans. Miller studied the tactical displays showing cartel observation teams still trying to understand their failure. Sometimes the best trap is one that looks exactly like what the enemy expects to find, he noted. They saw aging ranch hands maintaining a vulnerable property, never questioned why those ranch hands moved with tactical precision or maintained perfect fields of fire. Speaking of fields of fire, Mike reported from his monitoring station, "We've got movement at the southeast observation post. Looks like they're setting up a long-range optical surveillance." "Let them look," Miller replied. "Everything they can see is designed to maintain our cover. The sophisticated elements stay hidden behind agricultural equipment and ranch structures." The four command barn screens showed cartel observers photographing the property with telephoto lenses. They would see normal ranch operations continuing under federal supervision. The defensive positions, surveillance systems, and tactical equipment remained concealed behind carefully maintained cover. "Cooper," Miller addressed his intelligence specialist, "what are their communication patterns telling us about the organization's response?" Cooper brought up intercepted messages from the cartel's regional command. "They're struggling to understand how a simple ranch takedown turned into a catastrophic defeat. Multiple demands for explanation. Threats against Salazar's family for his failure. Growing paranoia about other supposedly vulnerable targets." The screens showed increasing chaos in the cartel's regional hierarchy, leaders demanding answers about how 50 experienced gunmen were eliminated with surgical precision. Orders to reassess all planned expansion operations, concerns about other potential traps waiting to be sprung. Their entire tactical approach relied on overwhelming force and intimidation, Tom noted, studying the intercepted communications. "The complete failure of those tactics against our position has shaken their operational confidence. Show me their standard assault procedures," Miller requested. Cooper displayed documents from Salazar's phone detailing the cartel's tactical methodology. "They typically hit targets with overwhelming numbers," Cooper explained. 4-to-1 numerical. Superiority minimum. Heavy weapons demonstrations to break resistance. Shock and awe to ensure quick submission. The screens showed previous operations where these tactics had proved successful against isolated ranches and farms. Civilian targets overwhelmed by superior numbers and firepower, forced to surrender their property to cartel expansion. Instead, they encountered a defensive position engineered by special operations veterans, Sarah added from her Overwatch post. Every apparent vulnerability designed to channel them into interlocking fields of fire. Every obvious cover position pre-ranged for precision engagement. Their tactical failure was inevitable, Mike noted, manipulating the surveillance feeds. They prepared to intimidate civilians with superior numbers. Instead, they faced professional operators who had spent months preparing the perfect kill box. Miller nodded in agreement. The cartel's approach had played directly into their defensive preparation. Overwhelming numbers meant nothing against precision fire from concealed positions. Superior firepower was irrelevant when every shooter was eliminated before reaching their weapons. "Agent Ramirez is wrapping up with Salazar," Cooper reported, monitoring the DEA interview. "His information confirms most of what we already gathered through surveillance, but he's provided additional details about their command structure and future operations." The screens showed the defeated cartel officer being led to a transport vehicle. His arrogant confidence had been replaced by the broken demeanor of a man who realized how completely he had been outmaneuvered. "Maintain full security protocols," Miller instructed his team. "The DEA has their prisoners and evidence, but we still have a defensive position to protect. The cartel will want revenge for this failure." His defenders acknowledged with professional precision, each returning to their assigned duties. The brief violence of the morning had demonstrated their tactical efficiency, but experience had taught them that victories often drew retaliation. As midnight approached, Rattlesnake Ranch maintained its defensive readiness. Sarah's precision, rifle-covered approaches from elevated concealment. Tom's teams patrolled the perimeter with night vision equipment. Mike monitored surveillance systems for any sign of cartel probing attacks. In the command barn, Cooper continued extracting intelligence from seized devices while Miller studied the tactical displays. The morning's engagement had been a perfect example of special operations principles applied to civilian defense: careful preparation, precise execution, and complete dominance of the battlefield. The cartel had intended to make an example of an aging rancher who refused their expansion. Instead, they had walked into an elaborate trap that would dismantle their regional infrastructure. Sometimes the best special operations victories looked exactly like simple self-defense, right up until they revealed their deeper purpose. Dawn painted the Texas sky blood red as Cooper's surveillance systems detected the first signs of the cartel's response. 300 miles south, in a luxurious hacienda near Monterrey, Vicente Ramirez had convened an emergency meeting of the organization's regional leadership. Miller's team monitored the gathering through sophisticated signals intelligence equipment disguised as agricultural monitoring stations. 8 cartel commanders present, Cooper reported, manipulating satellite feeds on his command screens, plus their senior tactical advisors. They've been in session for 3 hours discussing the ranch operation failure. Miller studied the intercepted communications with practiced analysis. After decades running special operations, he recognized the patterns of an organization preparing serious retaliation. Our ranch wasn't just a tactical target, Cooper continued, displaying intercepted messages. It was meant to be a statement operation, demonstrating the consequences of defying their expansion. Instead, we've humiliated their entire regional command structure. The screens showed increasing fury from cartel leadership. 50 of their best gunmen eliminated with surgical precision. Senior officers captured with valuable intelligence. Their reputation for invincibility shattered by what appeared to be simple ranch hands. They're mobilizing significant resources, Sarah reported from her observation post, her precision rifle now equipped with advanced thermal imaging for pre-dawn operations. Multiple tactical teams moving north from staging areas, heavy weapons being consolidated. This is going to be a major response. Miller nodded, studying the tactical displays. The cartel couldn't afford to let such a devastating defeat go unanswered. Their entire operational model relied on the appearance of overwhelming force and inevitable victory. "Show me their approach options," he instructed. Cooper brought up detailed terrain maps overlaid with thermal imaging and signals intelligence. "They're staging forces here, here, and here. Looks like they're planning a coordinated multi-directional assault, much larger scale than the first attempt." Tom Roberts studied the tactical displays with the experience of 20 years in Special Forces unconventional warfare. They're adapting their approach. No more direct frontal assault. This will be a sophisticated operation with proper tactical planning. "Good," Miller replied with grim satisfaction. "Let them come with their best effort. Everything they see is exactly what we want them to see. Every apparent vulnerability engineered to channel them exactly where we want them." The command barn screens showed cartel forces marshalling for a major operation, weapons and vehicles being staged, tactical teams rehearsing coordinated movements, leadership conducting detailed planning rather than relying on brute force intimidation. Their communications suggest 3 days preparation before the main assault, Cooper reported. Multiple tactical teams approaching from different directions, heavy weapons support, even drone reconnaissance of our positions. "Perfect," Miller nodded. "That gives us time to prepare an appropriate welcome. Sarah, coordinate with Mike on adjusting our long-range firing positions. Tom, your teams need to modify the channeling obstacles to account for their new approach vectors." His defenders acknowledged with professional precision, each understanding their role in the elaborate trap being prepared. The cartel was coming, with overwhelming force and careful planning. They would find that every adaptation played directly into prepared countermeasures. "They still don't understand what they're really attacking," Sarah noted while calculating new firing solutions. "Think we just got lucky with superior positioning, haven't realized they're assaulting a defensive position engineered by special operations veterans." Miller allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the best tactical advantage was letting the enemy believe they had figured out your secrets. The cartel would come with a sophisticated assault plan, never realizing that every countermeasure had been anticipated and prepared for months in advance. The Texas sun rose on Rattlesnake Ranch as Miller's team began adapting their defenses. To approaching cartel observers, it would look like normal agricultural activity. But each movement served a tactical purpose: adjusting fields of fire, modifying channeling obstacles, preparing new firing positions. The trap was being reset, deadlier than before. and the cartel was walking straight into it. 2 days before the cartel's planned assault, Miller gathered his team for final defensive preparations. The command barn's sophisticated displays showed extensive enemy movements, tactical teams staging equipment, heavy weapons being positioned, reconnaissance elements probing their perimeter. Everything pointed to a massive operation being assembled. "They're adapting their tactics," Cooper reported, manipulating surveillance feeds that covered a 50-mile radius, multiple command elements coordinating through encrypted channels, professional military advisors consulting on tactical approach. This isn't going to be another brute force attack. The screen showed disciplined cartel teams conducting rehearsals. Gone was the arrogant swagger of their first assault. These men moved with purpose, practicing coordinated small unit tactics under the guidance of what appeared to be former military instructors. "Show me their command structure," Miller requested. Cooper brought up intelligence gathered through their sophisticated monitoring systems. Vicente Ramirez is personally overseeing the operation. He's brought in tactical advisors with special forces backgrounds. Looks like former Mexican GAFE operators. They're implementing proper military planning protocols. The displays showed the cartel's new operational approach. 4 primary assault elements, Cooper indicated on the tactical map, each with specialized roles and objectives. Heavy weapons support pre-positioned here and here. Drone reconnaissance, teams mapping our defensive positions. Even counter-sniper units specifically tasked with locating and eliminating our precision rifle assets. Sarah studied the intelligence with professional interest, her spotoscope still scanning approaches through concealed ports. They've learned from the first engagement. No more bunching up in kill zones, proper dispersion and movement techniques. These aren't amateur gunmen anymore. Good, Miller nodded with grim satisfaction. Let them come with their best effort. Everything they see is exactly what we want them to see. Every countermeasure they develop plays directly into prepared contingencies. The command barn screens painted a comprehensive picture of the approaching threat. Thermal imaging tracked vehicle movements. Signals intelligence monitored command communications. Satellite feeds showed staging areas being established with military precision. "Talk me through their tactical changes," Miller instructed. Mike Chen manipulated the displays, highlighting key elements. "They've completely revamped their approach. No more direct frontal assault. They're planning a sophisticated, multi-directional operation with proper tactical principles." The screens showed coordinated attack plans. Alpha Team will initiate with precision fire on known defensive positions, attempting to suppress our response capabilities. Bravo and Charlie elements will execute flanking maneuvers from different angles, using terrain features for covered approach. Delta Force provides heavy weapons support from pre-surveyed positions, including mortar teams for indirect fire. Drone assets will maintain real-time battlefield surveillance and coordinate tactical movements. They're even implementing proper communication security, Cooper added. Encrypted channels, authentication protocols, scheduled check-ins. This is a professional military operation now. Miller studied the intelligence with measured assessment. The cartel had learned from their devastating first defeat. No more relying on intimidation and overwhelming numbers. They were bringing sophisticated tactics backed by professional military expertise. "Show me our defensive adaptations," he requested. Tom Roberts highlighted their countermeasures on the tactical displays. "We've adjusted all firing positions to account for their new approach vectors. Modified channeling obstacles to funnel, movement into pre-ranged engagement zones. Established redundant positions for every defensive asset." The screens showed the intricate preparations concealed beneath the ranch's agricultural appearance. Sarah's precision rifle positions had been expanded into a network of interlocking overwatch sites, each camouflaged as normal farm structures. Mike's surveillance systems now covered additional approach routes, disguised as irrigation monitoring equipment. Tom's teams had engineered new obstacles that appeared to be normal ranch features, while channeling movement into prepared kill zones. Cooper's intelligence-gathering capabilities had been enhanced with additional sensors hidden in agricultural machinery. "They still don't understand what they're really attacking," Sarah noted while calculating new firing solutions. "Think they just got unlucky against superior positioning. Haven't realized this entire ranch is a sophisticated defensive position engineered by special operations veterans." Miller's team had spent their careers mastering different aspects of combat operations. Sarah Martinez hadn't just been a Marine Scout sniper. She had revolutionized their urban warfare doctrine during 3 combat tours. Her precision rifle work had earned her recognition as one of the most skilled marksmen in military history. Walk me through your new firing positions, Miller requested. Sarah manipulated the tactical displays. Primary position remains in the modified grain silo, but we've established 3 additional hides disguised as agricultural structures. Each covers specific approach routes with pre-calculated firing solutions. The screens showed interlocking fields of fire that left no safe approach to the ranch. Every apparent cover position was already ranged and targeted. Every obvious route led into prepared engagement zones. Counter-sniper teams won't find what they're looking for, she added with professional satisfaction. Everything they can see is designed to maintain our cover. The real positions stay hidden behind careful camouflage and agricultural equipment. Tom Roberts brought decades of Special Forces experience in unconventional warfare. He had helped design military defensive positions across 4 continents before applying that expertise to transform an aging ranch into a tactical masterpiece. Show me the channeling modifications, Miller instructed. Tom highlighted their engineered obstacles. We've adjusted all natural features to subtly direct movement exactly where we want it. Every fence line, every cattle guard, every water feature serves a tactical purpose while appearing completely normal. The displays showed how they had shaped the battlefield. Drainage ditches that seemed random actually created perfect fields of fire. Grazing paddocks channeled movement into pre-ranged killing zones. Even the cattle herd's movement patterns were choreographed to influence approaching forces. Mike Chen's Delta Force background included extensive work with elite counter-narcotics units. His understanding of cartel tactics had enabled them to predict and prepare for every aspect of their assault strategy. Talk me through their likely movement patterns, Miller requested. Mike manipulated the surveillance feeds. They'll try to use these terrain features for covered approach, thinking like professional military units now. Proper tactical spacing, mutual support, coordinated movements. The screens showed likely attack routes based on proper military doctrine. But every approach they might choose had already been prepared, for every tactical decision anticipated and countered. Cooper Williams had served in classified special operations intelligence roles, his technical expertise transforming agricultural equipment into sophisticated surveillance systems. His monitoring station gathered intelligence that rivaled major military installations. Show me their command and control vulnerabilities, Miller instructed. Cooper brought up communications analysis. They're using encrypted tactical radios, but we're intercepting enough to track their operational planning. Drone feeds are secured but can be spoofed if needed. They think they have good operational security, but we see everything. The displays showed comprehensive monitoring of cartel preparations. Tactical team movements tracked in real-time command communications, intercepted and analyzed staging areas. Under constant surveillance, even their drone reconnaissance observed and recorded. As evening approached, Miller's team continued refining their defensive preparations. To cartel observers, it looked like normal ranch activity, but every movement served a tactical purpose. Adjusting fields of fire, modifying channeling obstacles, preparing new firing positions. Remember, Miller addressed his defenders. They're coming with sophisticated tactics and professional military guidance. But everything they see is exactly what we want them to see. Every countermeasure they develop plays directly into prepared contingencies. The screens showed cartel forces continuing their preparations. Tactical teams rehearsing coordinated movements, heavy weapons being positioned, reconnaissance elements mapping approach routes, all under the direction of experienced military advisors who thought they had figured out how to overcome the ranch's defenses. They're planning a textbook military operation, Sarah observed from her concealed position. Problem is, we wrote the book they're reading from. 30 years training America's elite warriors gives you pretty good insight into tactical planning. Miller allowed himself a grim smile. The cartel was coming with overwhelming force and professional military expertise. They would find that every adaptation played directly into prepared countermeasures. Every tactical innovation already anticipated and countered. The Texas sun set on Rattlesnake Ranch as final defensive preparations continued. In the darkness, thermal imaging showed cartel forces moving into staging positions. Their tactical teams conducted last-minute rehearsals. Command elements finalized. Assault plans. They were bringing their absolute best effort, sophisticated tactics, professional military guidance, overwhelming force. And they still didn't understand what they were really attacking. The trap was being reset, deadlier than before. And the cartel was walking straight into it with eyes wide open. The assault began in false dawn, that dangerous period between night and morning when human vision is most compromised. But Miller's team didn't rely on human vision. Their sophisticated thermal imaging and night vision equipment tracked every cartel movement with crystal clarity. 4 assault elements moving into initial positions, Cooper reported from the command center, his screens painting the approaching forces in stark digital relief. Heavy weapons teams establishing fire support bases, drone assets initiating reconnaissance patterns. Miller watched the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. The cartel's forces moved with precise military discipline, proper spacing, coordinated movements, mutual support positions. Everything by the book. Unfortunately for them, it was Miller's book they were following. Alpha Team initiating, Cooper announced as the first shots cracked across the ranch. Precision rifle fire targeted their known defensive positions that had been carefully prepared as obvious decoys. Let them think they've got us suppressed, Miller instructed. Sarah, maintain concealment. Everyone hold until they commit to the main assault. Through their tactical nets, they heard the cartel commanders directing their forces with professional efficiency. Alpha has suppressed enemy positions. Bravo and Charlie, begin flanking movements. Delta, prepare supporting fire missions. Coordinates, follow. Drone assets confirm no movement from defender positions. The cartel's tactical teams advanced with textbook precision, exactly as they had rehearsed. Their former Special Forces advisors had trained them well, but they were executing a plan that Miller's team had helped write decades ago. They're moving into the primary kill zones, Sarah reported quietly from her true position, concealed in a location that appeared completely exposed to suppressive fire. Range cards confirmed, all approaches covered. Miller watched the thermal displays as over 200 cartel gunmen maneuvered into what they thought were tactically sound positions. Everything they saw suggested their sophisticated planning was working perfectly. Execute, Miller commanded as the trap reached perfection. Teach them what happens when you bring military tactics to a special forces fight. What followed would be studied in military academies for years to come. The morning sun crested over Rattlesnake Ranch as Vicente Ramirez watched his elite assault force dissolve into chaos. Through his command post's sophisticated surveillance equipment, he witnessed what should have been impossible: over 200 professionally trained gunmen being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be simple ranch hands. All teams, hold positions, he shouted into the tactical radio. Maintain discipline, execute the plan. But there was no plan for this. His forces had done everything right. Proper tactical approaches, coordinated movements, sophisticated fire support. They had even successfully suppressed the defensive positions identified during 3 days of reconnaissance. Only now did Ramirez understand that everything they had seen, every defensive position they had mapped, every tactical advantage they thought they had gained, had been carefully engineered to bring them to this moment. Miller's voice crackled across all their radio frequencies, the encrypted channels they thought secure now completely compromised. Mr. Ramirez, I believe it's time for a final lesson in special operations warfare. The ranch erupted in a symphony of precision violence that demonstrated why Miller had spent 30 years training America's deadliest warriors. Sarah Martinez's precision rifle spoke from a position that should have been suppressed by Alpha Team's fire. Her first shot eliminated the cartel's tactical commander, a former Mexican Special Forces officer who realized too late they were executing a plan against its original author. Her second shot disabled the primary drone control station, leaving their aerial assets flying blind. Mike Chen's interlocking fields of fire caught Bravo and Charlie elements in perfectly engineered kill zones. Every route they had mapped as tactically sound funneled them directly into pre-ranged shooting positions. The terrain features they thought provided cover channeled them exactly where Miller's team wanted them. Tom Roberts' defensive preparations demonstrated why he had spent decades designing military positions across 4 continents. Every apparent vulnerability concealed a deadly trap. Every obvious tactical approach led straight into carefully prepared engagement zones. The cartel's sophisticated maneuvers played directly into fields of fire developed by an expert in unconventional warfare. From his command position, Miller directed the defense with cold precision, decades of special operations experience evident in every order. Sarah, shift fire to their heavy weapons teams. Mike, contain their eastern retreat routes. Tom, initiate secondary obstacle plan. The cartel forces discovered that their carefully planned escape routes had been subtly engineered to create perfect ambush positions. Even their contingency plans played directly into prepared countermeasures. Cooper's surveillance systems tracked every movement, his technical expertise turning agricultural equipment into a sophisticated military command center. Thermal imaging showed panic spreading through the cartel ranks as they realized the true nature of what they were facing. "Sir," one of Ramirez's tactical advisors shouted, "these aren't ranch hands. This is a professional military operation. We've walked into a prepared defense engineered by special operations veterans." The realization came too late. Miller's team had spent careers training elite warriors in exactly this type of combat. Every aspect of the ranch had been designed over 2 years to create the perfect defensive position, disguised as a simple agricultural operation. "Mr. Ramirez," Miller's voice carried across their compromised communications with almost grandfatherly patience. "I spent 30 years teaching America's finest warriors how to hunt men like you. Did you really think we chose this location by accident? That we didn't spend years preparing for exactly this type of response?" Through his command post screens, Ramirez watched his entire tactical force being systematically dismantled. Over 200 experienced gunmen, advised by former Special Forces operators, equipped with sophisticated weapons and technology, being taken apart with mechanical precision by a vastly smaller but infinitely more skilled opponent. Sarah's precision rifle continued its deadly work, each shot carefully chosen for maximum tactical impact. Leaders eliminated, communications disabled, heavy weapons neutralized before they could be brought to bear. The competition-level accuracy that had made her a legend in Marine Scout sniper circles now demonstrated why military snipers were often force multipliers against numerically superior enemies. Mike's defensive positions turned the cartel's own tactical doctrine against them. Every movement to gain advantage led them deeper into prepared kill zones. Every attempt to establish fire superiority exposed them to interlocking fields of fire. His Delta Force experience in counter-narcotics operations had taught him exactly how cartel forces would respond under pressure. Tom's engineering of the battlefield proved why Special Forces veterans were masters of unconventional warfare. The terrain itself became a weapon, subtle modifications channeling enemy movement exactly where they wanted it. Even the ranch's cattle, their grazing patterns carefully choreographed, served to influence tactical decisions in ways the cartel never suspected. Cooper's technical expertise turned their own technology against them. Drone feeds hijacked to show false information. Radio encryption broken to monitor tactical communications. Even their sophisticated night vision equipment rendered less effective than Miller's team's specially modified systems. "Final chance, Mr. Ramirez." Miller's voice carried clearly through their compromised communications. "You can surrender your remaining forces now, or we can continue demonstrating why Special Operations veterans are force multipliers against conventional troops." In his command post, Ramirez struggled to comprehend the magnitude of their failure. They had come with overwhelming numbers, sophisticated tactics, professional military guidance, and superior firepower. All it had earned them was a masterclass in special operations warfare. "How?" he demanded, professional composure finally breaking. "How did simple ranch hands defeat our entire tactical force?" "That's the beauty of proper special operations planning," Miller responded with almost academic satisfaction. "Everything you saw was exactly what we wanted you to see. Every defensive position you mapped was designed to be seen. Every tactical advantage you thought you had was engineered to bring you exactly where we wanted you." The screens showed the full extent of the trap they had walked into. Hidden firing positions covered every approach. Sophisticated surveillance. Systems tracked every movement. The entire ranch had been transformed into an interlocking defensive position that rivaled military installations. "Boss," Cooper reported through their secure channels. "DEA tactical teams are approaching from multiple directions. Looks like they monitored the cartel's movements and prepared a response force." Miller allowed himself a small smile. Their federal colleagues had learned from the first encounter, positioning assets to take advantage of the inevitable cartel defeat. "Mr. Ramirez," he addressed the cartel commander one final time, "I suggest immediate surrender. Your tactical forces have been functionally eliminated. Federal response teams are approaching, and my defenders still have plenty of ammunition if you'd prefer to continue this lesson in special operations warfare." Through the command post screens, Ramirez watched the remnants of his elite assault force laying down weapons. Over 200 experienced gunmen, supported by former Special Forces advisors, defeated in under 30 minutes by a vastly smaller but infinitely more skilled opponent. As DEA tactical teams moved in to secure survivors and gather evidence, Miller's defenders maintained their positions. Years of combat experience had taught them that tactical situations remained fluid until fully resolved. Sarah's precision rifle continued covering approaches, from concealed positions that had never been spotted by cartel reconnaissance. Mike's interlocking fields of fire remained oriented on likely escape routes. Tom's engineered obstacles channeled movement into controlled zones. Final numbers, Cooper reported from the command center. Enemy force, approximately 215 combatants. Casualties, 76 eliminated, 92 combat ineffective. Survivors surrendering, 47 remaining. Our ammunition expenditure, 312 rounds total. Time, from initiation to resolution, 27 minutes. The tactical efficiency reflected decades of combined special operations experience. Every shot carefully chosen, every position precisely prepared, every movement professionally executed. DEA agent Ramirez approached the command barn, her expression showing professional appreciation for the defensive masterpiece they had witnessed. Knew they'd come back stronger, she observed. This whole operation was designed to draw out their entire tactical capability. Miller nodded as his team began emerging from their concealed positions. Sometimes the best special operations strategy is to let the enemy think they've figured out your capabilities. Everything they saw in the first engagement was engineered to bring a larger, more sophisticated response that we could completely dismantle. The Texas sun climbed higher as federal agents processed the aftermath of cartel ambition meeting special operations expertise. Miller's defenders maintained security, professionals who understood that tactical situations weren't over until fully resolved. Vicente Ramirez sat in a DEA transport vehicle, his expensive tactical gear covered in Texas dirt. The cartel commander, who had brought overwhelming force to seize a simple ranch, had received an expensive lesson in why some targets weren't worth pursuing. In the command center, Cooper continued gathering intelligence from seized equipment, while Sarah's precision rifle covered the ongoing prisoner transport. Tom coordinated with federal tactical teams, securing the outlying areas, while Mike maintained overwatch on potential escape routes.